Oh, there is something else I wanted to do. The end voice that I use for the podcasts. It's been cut short, and I think it was time to do it. And this is something else I have to do is reorganize my whole desk. So what I've done, so let's get this out of the way so I can see. What I've done is I've taken the microphone and I've put it on my box collection of Battle Angel Alita. It got pretty beat up in the posts when I brought it back to Japan. So it's an English one. So that I had to tape that up. The box is fine. The books actually are still in good shape. But I just got to clean everything up. So you can see this. I have that sitting on a box so that the mic's really close to my face. My friends were complaining that I was too quiet. First time I've ever had that complaint. But it means now I lose a lot of desk space, so I don't have the keyboard in front of me. So I'm thinking of angling the keyboard on one side and having this on the other side. I will have to turn a bit when I type, but just what do I want to say at the end of the podcast? I was actually thinking of making one because I have C. McBee, the Loss of Podcast, and Ninja News Japan. So I was thinking if I could make one for all of them, but I think that's actually, I don't know. I don't know if I'm doing myself a disservice by just making one thing. It's a bit cheap. And, I'm not into that. Thank you for listening. It's pretty standard. You can find the podcast on iTunes. Or anywhere you subscribe to podcasts. Whoa. This is the problem of trying to type in an awkward position. What else? You can watch the podcast on YouTube. Search for also streaming on Twitch. Twitch.tv/Chunk McBeef Chest. I will actually be very interested to see what this says. So what do I do? Something went wrong. That is disappointing because, well, actually, I'll just copy this because I opened a couple on purpose. Okay, let's just make sure I have that. Let's try again. Okay, well, this sucks. This is one I've used before. I think. Okay, we'll accept your cookies. What are our choices? What? They've got so many more voices. Canadian, French, Dutch, Flemish, Japanese. Korean, Mandarin. Let's just do. Wait. Oh, U.S. English. Let's get Bridget. Control V.
This is a demo. Thank you for listening. You can find the podcast on iTunes or anywhere you subscribe to podcasts. You can watch the podcast on YouTube.
Oh, I only get 30 seconds. You sons of bitches. Because I've done this before. Connecting engage across all customers. Could I have a voice? Could you have my voice come through your car and give you directions? I'm annoyed. There's gotta be one that I can just use for free. Because I've done it before. So you're garbage. My own YouTube page is garbage. All right, let's try this one. English UK female. She doesn't have a name. English UK male. Maybe it's time to do a man's voice. No, my voice is male. We'll just do a female voice. I like girls. Yeah, I'm going to have to figure out this keyboard issue.
Thank you for listening.
Oh.
You can find the podcast on iTunes or anywhere you subscribe to podcasts. You can watch the podcast on YouTube. Search for Velosa Podcast. Also streaming on Twitch. Twitch.tv/chunkmcbeefchest.
I don't like the way she said, nah, I'm not a big fan of this voice. She sounded almost like disappointed. Search for Velocity Podcast. Yeah. So let's try English US G. I don't know what G is.
Thank you for listening. You can find the podcast on iTunes or anywhere you subscribe to podcasts. You can watch the podcast on YouTube. Search for Velocity Podcast. Also streaming on Twitch. Twitch.tv/chunkmcbeefchest.
I enjoyed the way she said Chunk McBeefchest. Can I save this? Oh, this is, you got to record. Actually, if I just play this, it will record right into Twitch, and I'm going to download that anyway. So I'm just going to play the whole thing and not comment.
Thank you for listening. You can find the podcast on iTunes.
No, I immediately realized what I'd missed, which is the favorite part, which is why I wanted to redo the whole thing. Sexy out, homies. Okay, we'll try again now.
Thank you for listening. You can find the podcast on iTunes or anywhere you subscribe to podcasts. You can watch the podcast on YouTube. Search for Velocity Podcast. Also streaming on Twitch. Twitch.tv/chunkmcbeefchest. Sexy out, homies.
I like the little stumble with the homies. We're going to try a couple more voices. Because, I mean, I'm just getting this now, so. If I do in English, will I get a French accent?
Thank you for listening. You can find the podcast on iTunes or anywhere you subscribe to podcast. You can watch the podcast on YouTube. Search for Veloci Podcast. Also streaming on Twitch. Twitch.tv/chunkmcbeefchest. Sexy out, homies.
Oh, I'm so happy with that one. Let me get all of that copied. Oh, that was so good. I like Veloci Podcast. It sounds... Oh, no, I'm... Okay. We're going to have to do a bunch of voices. Hindi is a great accent.
Thank you for listening. You can find the podcast on iTunes or anywhere you subscribe to podcasts. You can watch the podcast on YouTube. Search for Velosa Podcast. Also streaming on Twitch. Twitch.tv/chunkmcbeefchest. Sexy out, homies.
I don't like the way she said Chunk McBeefchest, but the sexy out homies was good. Italian. Oh, please.
Thank you for listening. You can find the podcast on iTunes or anywhere you subscribe to podcasts. You can watch the podcast on YouTube. Search for Veloci Podcast. Also streaming on Twitch. Twitch.tv/chunkmcbeefchest.
Oh, it's
Sexy out, homies.
The Chunk McBeefchest. Let's do that last part again.
Twitch.tv/chunkmcbeefchest. Sexy out, homies.
They apparently don't have a Mick. I guess it makes sense. They don't have Mick in Italian. Ayumi. Oh, I think I just fell in love.
Thank you for listening. You can find the podcast on iTunes or anywhere you subscribe to podcast. You can watch the podcast on YouTube. Search for Veloci Podcast. Also streaming on Twitch. Twitch.tv/chunkmcbeefchest. Sexy out, homies.
You can find the podcast on iTunes or anywhere. Whatever podcast you're listening to, that's the base one. Is you go to iTunes and you search for the name. On YouTube, I've only done one YouTube channel as well. You can follow this podcast. That's fine. We'll just do that. I'm gonna do a couple more voices, and then I'm gonna go take Dave for a walk. Dave's. Oh, there's 2 Japanese girl voices. All right.
Thank you for listening. You can find the podcast on
That's not different enough for it to matter. Deutsch.
You can.
No. We got to start at the beginning.
Thank you for listening. You can find the podcast on iTunes or anywhere you subscribe to podcasts. You can watch the podcast on YouTube. Search for Veloci Podcast. Also streaming on Twitch. twitch.tv/JunkerMcBeefcast. Sexy out, homies.
A lot of the voices are getting sexy out, homies. Pretty good. English, Canada, Microsoft Linda. Probably not my first choice.
Thank you for listening. You can find the podcast on iTunes or anywhere you subscribe to podcasts. You can watch the podcast on YouTube. Search for Veloci Podcast. Also streaming on Twitch. twitch.tv/chunkbeefchest. Sexy out, homies.
The Italian one was probably the best one. Oi. Now I forget if I did English UK female. I'm pretty sure I did. The French was good. Let's do Portuguese.
Thank you for listening. You can find the podcast on iTunes or anywhere you subscribe to podcasts.
Subscribe.
You can watch the podcast on YouTube. Search for Veloci Podcast. Also streaming on Twitch. twitch.tv/ChunkMcBeefTest. Sexy out, homies.
Okay. Control copy. I am going to just try one more because we have the Watson free demo. And we'll just see how it works. Proceed to demo. Yes, please. Whoa. Okay, let's start with English. Select a dialect. British is fancy. Charlotte or Kate? Well, Kate sounds like more my speed. It's thinking.
Thank you for listening. You can find the podcast on iTunes or anywhere you subscribe to podcasts. You can watch the podcast on YouTube. Search for Veloci Podcast. Also streaming on Twitch. twitch.tv/chunkbeefgist. Sexy out, homies.
She sounded actually a little. Yeah, the YouTube didn't sound right. Anyways, try again.
Thank you for listening. You can find the podcast on iTunes or anywhere you subscribe to podcasts. You can watch the podcast on YouTube. Search for Veloci Podcast. Also streaming on Twitch. twitch.tv/chunkbeefgist. Sexy out, homies.
Let's do an American. Oh, there's a bunch of Americans. Allison. Okay.
Thank you for listening. You can find the podcast on iTunes or anywhere you subscribe to podcasts.
Nope.
You can watch the podcast on YouTube.
Nope.
Search for Veloci Podcast. Also streaming on Twitch. twitch.tv/chunkbeefgist. Sexy out, homies.
I actually probably should split up Chunk McBeefchest. It's supposed to be in French. I'm not doing that. Let's see what it sounds like.
Thank you for listening. You can find the podcast on iTunes or anywhere you subscribe to podcast. You can.
Yeah, because it's looking French. So anything that's close to French pronunciation, it's doing French.
Thank you for listening. You can find the podcast on iTunes or anywhere you subscribe to podcast. You can watch the podcast on YouTube. Search for Veloci Podcast. Also streaming on Twitch. twitch.tv/chunkbeefchest. Sexy Utomi.
twitch.tv/. Oh, I really like that. Okay, we'll do Italian, then I'm going to stop. Because the Italian one, we only have Francesca. And I can tell you, I'm already in love with Francesca.
L'unione contribuisce alla salvaguardia e allo sviluppo di questi valori comuni nel rispetto della diversità.
It was I didn't paste in. It swapped out the words. All right. Now we're doing the right thing.
Thank you for listening. You can find the podcast on iTunes or anywhere you subscribe to podcasts. You can watch the podcast on YouTube. Search for Veloci Podcast. Also streaming on Twitch. Twitch.tv/podcast. See you Tomies.
No, I think the French one was better. I will go through some of those and pick one. That will be the new ending for my podcast. I got to actually think of some other stuff I could say that would be more fun.